Hello, my name is Maarten de Boer. I'm what you could call a veteran mastering engineer because I'm in business now for about 28 years. I started out way back in '82, then of course still vinyl. CD wasn't there yet. And in '82 I switched to CD, or did it at the same time. Then we had to invest quite a lot of money to start a CD mastering room, which is quite different from nowadays. But we did it because we knew it was the future. This is where we are now. I'd like to show you around my equipment that I'm using, which is a bit different from what quite a lot of other mastering engineers are using nowadays, but that's mainly because of the times where I started. Let's have a look at that. Maybe it's a good idea if I explain a bit more what mastering is all about. What we get is, of course, the finished tracks from the recording studio. But that's the point where we can improve upon it. We can adjust, we can improve upon the color, on the dynamics, and on the level. Level is very important nowadays. For that, of course, we need very good equipment because we are actually touching other people's creativity. So we use the best possible equalizers, the best possible compressor limiters. And, well, you could say we are an audiophile side of professional recording, but then, of course, without the nonsense of cables and things like that. And we are there to improve, to be sure that a check, and double check that the end result is the best possible, because that's what mastering is for. Okay, now the explanation of what I use. I've got a digital side on my console and an analog side, and let's start forward with the digital side. Normally I use as much as possible equipment from the Wyse company. They are very good at digital equipment. And the first one you see here is a simple frequency converter. It's got 2 channels, 2 times stereo, and it's meant for upsampling and downsampling to connect the different pieces of equipment together. The second one is a POW-R, as they call it, and it's a noise shaping piece of equipment. What it does is adjust 24-bit back to 16-bit without creating any digital artifacts. And then, of course, we've got the D2A and the A2D. Both run up to 96K and are being considered really the best in the world. Very expensive pieces of equipment, but that's, of course, necessary for good mastering. The most important thing is that Wyse actually optimizes every piece of equipment for the lowest jitter possible, and that, of course, is essential in digital. The smallest piece of equipment I've got here is my Lehman Audio monitoring amp. It's very simple, very straightforward, and totally neutral, and that's why I bought it. No switches, no thrills and frills, and that's what I like. Okay, now let's turn to what you could call the nerve center of my studio. Of course, there's a digital audio workstation. I use a SADI system. I've been using it since '93. It's not very well suited for plugins, but I don't use any plugins, so that's easy. Here again is Wyse equipment. It's a remote control of a rack with modules, and it contains stereo equalizers, compressor limiters, de-essers, and a mixer, and also usable as a MS decoding and encoding system. The total is very, very high quality, as always with Wyse, and it gives me all the possibilities I need to make the corrections for anything that comes available. Here I have a little screen that shows me a little program which gives me a spectrum analyzer, phase monitor, and level. And there's also a very small program which controls my digital patch bay. It's very difficult with all this piece of digital equipment to do that with wire, so an electronically patch bay is much easier to use. Well, that's about it actually. Maybe we should turn to the analog side now. Now, I don't use analog all the time. Normally when I get really high quality masters from a studio and digital, that I don't use it, but very often it can also be a lifesaver for many recordings. Okay, now what you see here is a stereo equalizer made by Klein & Hummel. It's a German equalizer. It's a very high quality. It was made end of the 70s, beginning of the 80s, and it's one of my favorite actually. It's also very musical, which is why I like it much. The one below that is also equalizing, and it's a very rare one. It's a custom-made disc-cutting preamp, Orthophone, made for a Strawberry mastering in London in the end of the 70s. It's got shelving treble, shelving bass, and bell frequencies for the mid-range. And actually that's it. Also, you can actually change the balance in stereo and also change the width of the stereo image. This is a very rare one, and of course, because it's dedicated, made for disc cutting and not actually for mastering, well, not for CD mastering, it's got its own character, and that's why I like it so much, and that's why I use it very often. Well, that's actually about it on my analog side. The two together, of course, digital and analog, really gives me all the possibilities I need for a very good master. The monitoring system I use is a Bowers & Wilkins system. It's an 800 matrix system. Originally I started out with an 808, which is bigger, and then switched over to this 800 matrix, which is, well, more or less designed. It was actually meant for the living room, but it's a big for the living room. It's capable of a very high output, and that gives me, of course, a very high dynamic range, undistorted. That's what I need. It's being driven by 1.4 kilowatt of amps, and that gives me this distortion-free listening, and of course a very accurate system as well. In the acoustics that you have here, it gives you a plus or minus 3 dB system over the whole entire range from 30 Hz to 20K, and that's more than enough for me. Okay, now you've been watching all this expensive stuff, knobs and digital things, and it's impressive. It always is impressive. Every mastering studio is impressive. But the main thing is that you have to realize that what we deal with is music, and that is what it's all about. Whatever you do, digital, analog, you're treating music, and it has to be better. It has to be improved, and that's what we're here for. And even in this time and age, you have to realize that even if it's digital, in the end, real life is analog.